Well, Mike, we've been up to some musical tourism in recent weeks on the Adult Music Podcast here. We've gone to Italy. We did some piano paisans.
Yeah, we got that piano paisans. We need another trip to Italy soon, I think, because I've got those are piling up over here on the classical end.
We went to France with our third installment of the Frenching Me series with Keep
the
Frenching Me, Baby.
Series.
Yeah. And surprisingly, I didn't know we would have enough to match this theme, but sure enough we did. It's Greek Week on the Adult Music Podcast.
It is Greek Week.
Yeah,
indeed
amazing.
It is Greek Week. I can't believe I came up with 3 classical recordings by Greek composers, sometimes Greek artists too. And actually you came up with 3 jazz recordings by Greek artists. Not only that, you came up with the Jaco organ trio one a few weeks ago too. So there are apparently a lot of them out there. And we did the Angelakis too on the vibes.
That's right. Yeah, so that makes...
And we got 3 more coming.
After today, that'll be 5 Greek jazz releases. And I have to say that the ones on today's episode, I'm really excited about. They would be great no matter where they came from. So it's good to see some Greek artists with new releases out there. And I say Greek
Exciting
Week.
New discovery for us.
Yeah. Greek Week because today we're going to have 6 recordings, 3 classical and 3 jazz. But as Mike just mentioned, the Jaco organ trio, we've got an interview with Iakovos Simonitis that we recorded last night, and all about...
Yeah, it's the first we've done in a while.
Yeah, interview 4, and it's all about his new recording. And if you haven't heard that, you definitely got to check it out. And we're going to release that this week. That'll go up Thursday morning, June 30th in Japan. So that'll be U.S. time in the evening of the 29th, somewhere in between in Europe. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll put the link in that episode. But you can go back to episode 64, Menage a Trio. For our
Menage a Trio. You can hear what we said about the album.
Hear what we said about that. And you're going to get a lot of nice insight that Jaco shared with us about the genesis of his original tunes and the interesting, cool covers that he picked. He's got some Donny Hathaway and some other interesting tunes on there. So be sure to check that out midweek for our interview number 4.
And he filled us in on the Athens jazz scene, too. And now I want to go. We have to get out there and hear some jazz.
So, we're going to be going Greek this week, so I can't wait.
Yeah, let's start.
Oh, before we start...
we should say the name of the podcast, shouldn't we?
You're listening to the Adult Music Podcast, where we have music for the mature mind and more international all the time. And this is episode 69. Before we get into the tunes we're going to talk about, I want to remind everyone and tell any new listeners that in the episode description, you'll find links for all the recordings on Spotify and Apple Music for everything we'll discuss. Also, at the top of the description, there'll be a link to the full episode playlist. You can get all the music in one place on Deezer, our preferred streaming platform. You can also follow us there on the podcast. Just look up us as Adult Music Podcast, and you can find both the podcasts and all of our playlists up until now. Now, if you don't see the full description or list of recordings on whatever app or platform you use, come over to our host site, which is Podbean, PODBEAN.com. You can find us there. All the links are active and easy to follow. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow, subscribe, whatever app or platform you listen to us on. If you take just a moment to give us a ranking, write a short review, that helps us get listed in the browsing category recommendations on all the platforms, helps us get new listeners, and we'd appreciate that. You can also find us on Facebook. We've got a page there. Just look us up, Adult Music Podcast. You can leave a message or a comment. We also post some extra content, videos, and little musical humor things during the week. So you can check us out or leave a comment there. And if you want to get in touch directly, send us an email. We'd like to hear from you. Be sure to reply. Our address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com.
Yeah, we'll definitely reply because we get less than 10 messages a week.
Discounting all the
so
podcast really groupies who send things in.
Right.
Yeah. They know that you're the most eligible musical bachelor out
is
there
that
in
right?
podcast land.
They just covet my massive CD collection. I know. They just want me for my CDs.
Yeah.
like all women do, right? They see the CDs, they just they say, "Oh, this is my guy."
Yeah. They can never compete with that collection, that's for sure.
It's got to be both, sweetheart. Anyway, here we go. All right, let's get into the, speaking of CDs, I got 3 this week, and the first, we ready for this? We ready to get?
I'm ready. Let's jump in.
Start with talking about this music. Okay, the first, we'll do the 3 classical ones first. Oh, I should mention I am Mike, the classical guy, and that is, who are you, sir?
I'm Russ over here, picking out the jazz each week for the podcast.
Right, okay. So anyway, so we generally do this from the earliest kind of composed music first and then go on. So it's generally classical first. Mm-hmm. Jazz being at least 20th century. So
right.
Anyway, here we're all in the 20th century today, though, or 21st.
A very modern program,
so it's a very modern program, yeah. All right, so the first recording we have is the composer Georgios Axiotis, a new name for me. I hadn't heard about him. His orchestral works, and this is played by or performed by the new festival Opera-Symphony Orchestra Sofia, conducted by Byron Fidetzis, and it's on the Naxos label. Now, the reason we are even hearing this music is because of Byron Fidetzis' painstaking work to get it before the public. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I just want to say this record was released, or this album was released on the 22nd of April, 2022, although satisfying 22s in there. I wonder if there's any significance to that release date. But the music was all recorded from the 1st to the 3rd of May, 2003. So this has been sitting in somebody's desk drawer for 19 years.
What's up with that?
And we're finally hearing it today. Now, actually, we did get a little bit of insight into why this happens at Naxos from Daniel Bernardson. It's the way they work. Because remember, he's trying to get all those Wranitzky recordings that he did with Marek Stilek up, and they're releasing them all now. It looks like that Wranitzky ball is really rolling,
right?
But they're never really sure they're going to release something, or maybe they finally. They're a pretty adventurous label, to be honest. They record a lot of unknown like composers from the past, and I guess that Fidetzis finally kind of managed to get them to release this. And it's a good thing he did, because it's a pretty interesting album.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
First, a little background. Yeah. Let's get a little background first. Axiotis was born in Mariupol, Ukraine in 1875. Okay, so he's late 19th. I guess he'd be a modernist, but to be honest, he sounds very romantic to me. From the 19th century. But that's not really. He would be modernist because of any, for example, like Greek themes that we'd hear in his music, and we hear a few, although it's kind of like a combination of sort of like folk music and just something more traditional, something kind of not national, really. In 1887, his family settled in Athens, so he was around 12 years old, and Axiotis was sent to Naples to study in Italy. He got his diploma in 1901, returned to Greece, and became actively involved in Greece's cultural affairs. He was opposed to the Germanization of music education in Greece. In fact, this was a big thing in Europe at the time. Europe was trying to throw off the shackles of German musical culture and kind of come up with each sort of country was trying to come up with its own sort of approach. This is true in France as well. So instead of the Germanization of music in Greece, Axiotis proposes the curriculum have its roots in Greek folk music, and I love this, the Mediterranean character. They're very loquacious people, the Mediterraneans. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. Which was in what it means is it's related to the aesthetics of Italian verismo, which is like operas by Puccini. So they're going for, or Pagliacci by Leoncavallo would be verismo operas. So in other words, they're trying to get like authenticity, like sort of real situations. It's not like unlike, say, Wagner, where some Viking woman in a helmet is singing at the top of her lungs. That would not be naturalistic. Okay, right. It's a little more sort of mythical fantasy. So you have these, it's certainly not real, but realistic situations, basically. Okay. His views drew the ire. I love that. Drew the ire. I love that word. Ire of the Athens Conservatory's inner circle. Oh, how many times have we heard this kind of story? You know, you go to you work in a university and somebody's ire is going to be drawn by your idea that doesn't go along with the same old. Okay. Yeah. At some point, he went to Mykonos, where I've been too, beautiful island. Okay. Where he composed and became involved in public affairs. He remained there for the rest of his life, and then he died in Athens in October 1924. And he didn't really get to hear a lot of his works until like the very end of his life. They were first performed in 1923, the year before his death.
Oh, wow.
At the Hellenic Conservatory in Athens. This is kind of important. Under the direction of Dionysios Lavragas. Years later, his children had to leave Greece due to the occupation by the Axis powers during the war. And by the time his daughter Melpo, who was a leading writer, got back in 1965, the year I was born, by the way, her father's manuscripts had been all but lost. His son, Panagos, who was an architect, delivered the compositions in his possession to Theodoros Vavayanis, conductor of the Athens State Orchestra, who performed 4 of them after the war, but discontinued the effort after 1950. And Axiotis' scores went into storage without being cataloged. But in 1995, we have all this wonderful, music research going on, really since the 1980s. And well, there's always been musical research, but it really just amped up seemingly in the 1980s. In 1995, it just kind of kept going. Several of the works were rediscovered in an envelope marked Lavragas Scraps. Lavragas was the conductor, all right?
Scraps.
That Axiotis had given his compositions to before the war. Since then, Fidetzis, Byron Fidetzis, the conductor of this album, has set about restoring and making available for performance each of the rescued compositions, and that's what we're hearing here. Byron Fidetzis' efforts to get this music before the public, and quite frankly, I'm glad he did. They're really enjoyable.
Yeah.
All right. The first work, they're all fairly short. There's no big orchestra work on this album, but no worries there. The first one is called Sunset, a great one to start out with. It's very simple and straightforward, and there are some Greek modal harmonies in it, but the musical idiom is what the notes call transnational, meaning its musical origins are obscure. Think about... this would be it's kind of like a romantic era kind of sound, I think, if you think 19th century. It's very tender, got a very tender and evocative opening, sounding to my ear very sensually Italian, or maybe it's better to say sensually Mediterranean. I'm just comparing it to something that's more familiar to me, which would be Italian music. It's very striking. The orchestration, harp accompaniment with monophonic strings and winds is also striking. This is appealing right away. It really grabs the ear. We can hear something modal in the first minute at about the 1 minute 15-second mark. It's got some subtle sounds in the orchestration. There's something like a wood block from around the minute and 45 seconds on every second beat, which I really kind of enjoyed hearing, kind of a new sound. The first section of this piece ends at 3 minutes and 24 seconds. There's a full stop. Then a wind melody starts. It's still tender. This whole piece feels like just a light caress, an 8-minute caress. It's just really beautiful. Or perhaps it's the Mediterranean breeze against one's cheek at sunset.
He really introduces lots of timbres right away, and so I started to like it. He goes through all the sections, some nice clarinet and oboe and flute, and then you get some low brass support in there. The brass gets big, kind of nice balance with the strings and kind of these rising harp plucks in there too. So I was really, could tell, this is a composer who likes to use all the colors in the orchestra right away. So I was brought right into it from this first piece.
Yeah, I think this might have been my favorite one. In fact, it just felt really good. Mm-hmm. There's a crescendo that comes at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and at about the 6 minute and 15-second mark, the sound of the recording gets a little two-dimensional when the crescendo really climaxes. I think we're hearing the age of this recording here. We hear everything, but it doesn't sound very well defined. Like it kind of sounds like flattened. You know what I mean? Like it's not leaping out of the speakers. The orchestra sounds crowded into the speakers when they're playing loud. When they're not playing loud, though, it sounds nice and spacious. Okay, no worries though. I mean, this is a beautifully conducted piece. I'd say it's expertly paced. It really kind of comes across well. It's a little slow and seemingly perfect to put the mood across, and it's a very appealing work. I'd encourage listeners to hear it. All right. We get into something a little more intellectual next. This is the Prelude and Fugue. In this case, I'm just going to read from the notes here. Only the instrumental parts and the last page of the orchestral score have survived. It's so Fidetzis had to put this together from all the instrumental parts that he was able to collect. Let's see. It starts out. Where are my notes here? Okay. It starts out monophonically, and then we hear a wind instrument, which I think is a clarinet, but I couldn't really make it out, come in and play a theme above the monophonic opening. And soon we're already hearing contrapuntal lines, which I'm assuming we're still in the prelude at this point, but it's not a fugue yet. There's a big crescendo that suddenly pulls back. This is kind of something that Axiotis does quite a lot. It's a really romantic gesture. You get this big crescendo, and you get this big climax into the tonic chord, and then instead of that, it just pulls back at the last minute. It's like a tease. Okay. There's another big majestic crescendo at 2 minutes and 35 seconds that again gets pulled back. The string recording on this has a good separation, by the way. You can sort of make out the different sections of the string sections really well. We get another crescendo at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, same result, and they're getting more and more majestic as they go. There's a lot of tension building up. A gentle wind theme follows, and the crescendo this time features ominous timpani rolls as the volume builds. The prelude has very late romantic elements. At 5 minutes and 38 seconds, the fugue starts, and by 5 minutes and 49 seconds, the next voice enters. The fugue seems like the next episode in the prelude. It doesn't really sound separated from it, because the prelude doesn't get proper closure on a tonic chord, so it's not like Bach, really, who would separate the two. The fugue seems like the fugue seems like it's taken a bit slowly, but its relative cheerfulness comes across. There's some nice brass details in the background of the fugue points. It's a pretty inventive piece. Again, nice orchestration and a good dramatic ending. So pretty satisfying. All right, the biggest work on this album is the next 3 tracks. It's called A Love Trilogy. Oh, Mediterranean people can tell you all about love. Anyway, the first movement of this, the full name of the piece is A Love Trilogy Symphonic Impressions. And the movement titles of these, the first movement is On the Mountain, second movement On the Plain, and the third movement At the Ball. Well, what's happening at those places?
Yeah.
They don't tell us, but I guess we'll have to imagine. Anyway, let's be more chaste. The first movement, On the Mountain, this movement, unlike Sunset, uses clear Greek musical elements. There's a light romantic opening, and we hear some lovely evocations of nature around 1 minute and 20 second mark. The piece gets heavier with low strings playing a monophonic harmony, sometimes accompanied by harmony from the orchestra. The piece becomes atmospheric with sensitively played string melody in the 5th minute. Fidetzis' patience with the unfolding of the melodic lines is very impressive. He takes a very sort of slow pace, and it just feels like it unfolds sort of naturally. He really has lived with this music and really understands it, and really, you can tell, really loves it too. He captures a tempo that makes the music seem calm but insistent, And there's a crescendo at the 6 minute 15 seconds, which leads to a dramatic section. This gets pretty loud in the speakers. Fortissimi don't register completely clearly on this recording. This is another example of that. But they sound crowded in, sort of, to the sound field, I guess, or into the speaker. From this point onward, a section that evokes nature is juxtaposed with a very loud, insistent, triumphant theme, and the piece ends on the tranquil material that we heard earlier. Second movement, On the Plain. This is an intermezzo, according to Axiotis, but it's a long one. It's 12 minutes long. It's a really long time to claim that a piece is an intermezzo. Anyway, the thematic material has a strong folk character, clearly stated in the prolonged monophonic statement in the introduction. So if you like your Greek folk music, you want to go right to this track. This starts with the flute. Again, this is played in a low register, kind of sounding like, I guess, an aeolus, which is an ancient Greek instrument. Very pretty and evocative of a more perfect time in the past. All these kind of sounds make me think that, because, of course, all that survives of the past is what was best about it, you know? So we keep thinking the rest of it was like that, too. It wasn't, folks. It was probably a lot worse than we have it now. Okay, finally, at 1 minute and 33 seconds, the basses start playing the theme monophonically without the flute, who has dropped out. And the flute answers after the basses have played the theme. The basses come back at 3 minutes and 30 seconds to take up the theme again. These two, I said these two instruments, but the bass section and the flute are all we've heard so far. And all of the music has been monophonic with no harmony at all until the 4 minute mark. We hear a high flute playing the theme with commentary from other wind instruments, so we're finally hearing harmony. It's a pretty interesting approach, really. It never got boring. I liked all the modal harmony. Folk music just really just tend to draw you in, no matter where it's from. This harmonic section almost imperceptibly builds up over the next few minutes to something more dramatic. By the 7th minute, there's a rather unsubtle edit, it's being kind, at 7 minutes and 45 seconds, that introduces a new orchestral texture a little too suddenly. So I'm guessing that there's a tape spliced there. No worries, though. I mean, unless you're listening carefully, you probably won't even notice it. I used to work as an audio engineer, so I do notice these things. Like, you sort of get an ear for them. So forgive me for giving that away. This builds up to the wide open forte that we've been heading towards for such a long time, and we get a spacious theme in the 9th minute. The last 2 minutes of this has orchestration and figures vaguely reminiscent of Sibelius, but in a very different general environment. I mean, this isn't the cold Finnish nature that we hear in Sibelius, but there's a kind of a similar sort of orchestration at this point. It ends on a droning chord with winds twinkling, a very pretty effect. Third movement is called At the Ball, and this loosely follows a rondo form according to the notes. I would say that the word loosely is the key word there, because it's almost unidentifiable as a rondo form. It presents an image of Greece characterized by folk music and folk dance. Okay, this is going to just draw you in right away. And alludes to other pieces from around the same time by other Greek composers who shared Axiotis' aesthetic. Sort of like they're all at the ball with him, and he's kind of, and you know, we're hearing them through their music. Of course, unless you're a scholar, you're not going to know what these pieces are, unless you're really heavily involved in Greek music in general. I couldn't identify them, but no worries. Starts with the oboe playing monophonically. Monophonically, by the way, means with no accompaniment. It's playing either by itself or it's playing with other instruments that are playing the same note. So monophonic is what you hear when you go to the football match and everybody's chanting. That's monophonic. Okay, they're all chanting the same notes. But this time there are harmonized strings finishing the theme, so the music becomes homophonic. That's when there's a harmony. And the other one is polyphonic, when there are different melodies playing at the same time, and they're all equally important. Okay, still hearing that Greek folk idiom we've heard throughout the piece. This gets dramatic at 1 minute and 50 seconds. Then a stronger rhythmic element comes in. The first we've heard in these three movements. It's been very, like, unrhythmic or undancey, let's say, so far. At 2 minutes and 16 seconds, a traditional sounding folky dance theme comes in, complete with dulcimer-like accompaniment and tambourine. This gets pretty insistent with the timpani joining in, and then abruptly stops at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. We hear a bowed theme in the solo bass that leads to a warm, slow, elegant dance at the 5-minute mark with folk-like modal melodies. I love those modal melodies. This goes to a crescendo, cuts off, a favorite technique of Axiotis, and we get the same theme reorchestrated with gorgeous bubbling flutes accompanying. This is that sort of effect where the flutes aren't really kind of blown into but breathed into. It's a really sensual sound that I like. Ravel did it a lot. This happens at about the 6 minute 35 second mark. A quickly bowed cello theme comes out of this and leads to a new, faster folk dance with chords accompanying on and off the beats at 8 minutes or so. And this dance reaches a crescendo, and we're back to the atmospheric material to end the piece. This sounded more like a dance showcase than a rondo, to be honest. I couldn't really make out the theme returning. It just kind of sounded like we were walking into different rooms of the ball and seeing a different dance scene. Yeah, track 6 is called Remembrance of a Ball, so we're still in that... Again, when I hear the word ball, I think 19th century, to be honest. That was when these things were really, really popular among the aristocracy. And really, I think the First World War brought them to an end. Because it pretty much brought the aristocracy in Europe to an end. So people used to go to nightclubs after that, and they would do all these American dances, these jazz dances and stuff. Anyway, remembering the ball, this piece is called more transnational than Greek, meaning it doesn't have an identifiable sort of national characteristic, Greek or otherwise. And it has programmatic elements. It has a waltz rhythm that returns often, and the piece captures the atmosphere of Greek late Romanticism. It starts with a very romantic feel. This could almost be 1930s Hollywood in its louder, big-boned sections, but it was recorded way before that Hollywood sound, and Erich Wolfgang Korngold invented it. There's a generous warmth of gesture to the opening. At 2 minutes and 5 seconds, we suddenly change to a waltz rhythm. It's lightly orchestrated and played, and we go through a few rounds of this. The piece is effectively a set of atmospheric orchestrated sections that return to the waltz theme, back and forth, sounding romantic all the way. There's a rather fitful crescendo and interruption by the atmospheric material from 6 minutes and 30 seconds to 6 minutes and 50 seconds. We find our way back to the waltz, I guess to the dance itself, at 8 minutes and 20 seconds. And then the music slows to the big ending. Track 7, Lyrical Intermezzo. More description than a title. That's fine. This one is also doesn't have Greek elements. It has more of a verismo influence to it, the Italian sort of realism of the Italian opera. And Axiotis probably absorbed this during his studies in Naples, where he studied in the early 20th century or end of the 19th century. The piece has two main ideas. The first is intense and impassioned, and the second contemplative and lyrical. It starts monophonically, again, with a single melody, with a big melodic gesture, and the thematic material is passed from the brass to various wind instruments. We reach an end to the section with a harp arpeggio at 1 minute and 40 seconds. Then a much quieter, gently caressing string theme is heard. This gets more of a rhythmic profile at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. The piece is late romantic and very pretty in a glimmering way. At 4 minutes and 20 seconds, we get a return to the opening after a pause, and the piece stays this way all the way to its pretty ending. The last track, track 8, is called Like a Game. And this piece, according to the notes, had its probably what was its first performance in the year 2012 by the Thessaloniki City Symphony Orchestra, conducted by our conductor here, Byron Fidetzis. It's a cheerful piece in a loose sonata form. It sounds a bit carefully taken to my ear, and this is a piece I've never heard before, of course, but it sounds like it could go faster to get a little more excitement, because it sounds like it wants more excitement to it. I'll defer to the conductor as far as that goes, since this is the only performance in existence on tape. But all of the lovely orchestration is given a chance to sound at this speed. There are open fifths in the bass in the first minute, giving the piece a folk quality. Kind of sounds pastoral when you hear those open fifths in the bass. It also could be major or minor, you just don't know. This piece is cheerful in its open-heartedness, but not in the excitement it generates. So it's got an open-hearted feeling to it. I feel like Fidetzis is giving this piece too much space, as I mentioned before. I'm not hearing the flow of rhythm that I sense is there. This is especially clear on the repeated notes in the winds at 3 minutes and 43 seconds, or whenever there's a straight rhythm like that, you kind of notice, like, you get that sort of bicycle threatening to tip over kind of feeling. It's a nice piece. I can't complain about that. I'm hearing Scandinavian influences in this, by which I mean Sibelius, I guess, or maybe Nielsen in this case. In this case, it's Nielsen, in fact. Perhaps it's the folk idiom. I'm thinking of the last movement of Nielsen's Third Symphony with the voices. It kind of sounds like that's sort of a folky type theme. The folk theme keeps coming back, and the work ends with a big statement on it. Surely this... Okay, I keep complaining this piece was taken too slowly, I think. But it's good performance, and you should hear it. Okay, so there's some excellent pieces here to sum up. This is an album waiting to be discovered. Its late romantic idiom breathes the sunshine and air and feels the passion of the Mediterranean. So that's all in there. And there are Greek elements, too. I think especially of the second movement of the Love Trilogy, with its 4-minute sort of monophonic Greek folk theme feel. The recording is a bit lackluster. It's actually not bad. It's just kind of gets crowded in the crescendos. Those are a little harsh sounding, but otherwise detail registers very well. It's perfectly suitable. Axiotis' orchestral details are audible, but they could caress the ear more in a clearer recording. No worries. This'll do. It's very good, and I encourage you to hear it.
Yeah, I was excited. It's always nice to hear something, it's going to be the first time for you, and probably almost everyone else hasn't heard this either. So, it's kind of a rediscovery of something. And I was pleased, especially as I mentioned, I like the attention to the different timbres, colors of the orchestra. The themes are nice, really intriguing, engaging melodies that draw you in. There's, some folkiness to it, whether it's Greek or borrowed, but it's not overwhelming emphasis of things. And there's lots of kind of interesting compositional things that pull you in. I especially made a note. I like the Love Trilogy a lot, as well as the Sunset.
Yeah, I thought it was good as well.
Like you mentioned. In the first one, On the Mountain, which I found particularly moving, there's a great kind of fake-out cadence near the end of that 10 minutes and 45 seconds. You get all set up for something, and whew, the rug's pulled right out from under you, and it goes in a completely different direction. So he likes to do those kind of interesting things to keep you on your toes, and I always like those type of things that composers do to lead you in one way and then give you something unexpected. But overall, I just found the music was, melodic and very beautiful, flowed together well. And these are all kind of short pieces, easily digestible. Kind of makes me wonder what the other things he composed were. And hopefully...
I think a lot of it's lost, according to the notes, but I hope we'll hear more. This is really good. Yeah.
I kind of like the things that were going on, around this time. And he's also captured, some of the earlier music in these pieces. So, yeah, it's definitely an easy listen and very rewarding. So please do check it out.
And maybe we should try to talk to him, to Byron Fidetzis. Maybe he can fill us in.
That could be interesting, yeah. Yeah, I'd like to know.
Maybe
he's obviously put a big effort into piecing these together, and it's too bad they had to wait so long for anyone to hear this recording. But
yeah, there are a lot of questions I would have about this. Just where was the recording for 19 years, and just notes on the music too. What's left of it? What he had to do to put all this together. It sounds like a big job. Okay, yeah. Anyway, good for him, and highly recommended to listeners. Okay, I definitely hear it. Okay, our next recording in classical is contemporary Greek music for solo piano, performed by Fanni Karagianni on piano. And this is on the Phasma music label. I just love when we do these this
is a first for me.
Very minor labels. I've never heard of this label before, so it's good to have them be promoting them. All right, so this program was recorded from 2018 to 2021, 2018 to 2021. What am I saying? Okay, so over a long period of time, not that long, but I don't know. I guess a lot of it was done during the COVID period. Okay, now the program is called Contemporary Greek Music for Solo Piano, but it's not all contemporary. There are a few 20th century pieces on this as well. Okay, that's okay. We'll just the Greek part is the one part that really interests me. Okay. Anyway, the first three works on this are by Kostas Tsougas. These are all, well, not all of them. There are one or two composers on this that are fairly well known, but the rest of them are all contemporary and don't know them. Kostas Tsougas, born in 1966, so he's practically my age. And let's see. 3 stylistic studies based on Macedonian folk melodies. Oh, that drew me right away. This was written in 2011. The first one is a lullaby, and it's a study on Nikos Skalkatas, who did a lot of 12-tone music. I think he... we'll talk about him a little more later. I think he studied... I don't remember. He studied with Schoenberg himself, or... it depends. He I don't think he made it. He made it to the end of World War II, or he lived on until 1949. We'll find out later. I actually wrote it down. Okay, but the Skalkatas work that the style is based on is Passacaglia, which we'll hear later. So you can listen to both and hear what Tsougas has done. The booklet notes say it's a deconstruction/analysis of Skalkatas' style, and a reconstruction composition is attempted, initiating from 3 Macedonian folk songs that are the titles of the movements. Now he calls this lullaby. There's no way a baby is falling asleep to this.
Too much dissonance for a baby. What was it we said? Take your dissonance like a man, but it's too much for a baby.
That was Charles Ruggles that said that.
Yeah.
All right, the American composer Charles Ruggles. Look him up. Okay, yeah, this sounds pretty atonal, but that's where the Skalkatas influence lives. Skalkatas himself did a lot of arrangements of Greek folk music, but his more serious art music, a lot of it is in the 12-tone style. It's a pretty demanding listen. What's he calling it, a lullaby?
I don't know.
But I guess because it's based on a lullaby that's a Greek folk song. Okay, and he just put all this... it's not off-putting. We're kind of complaining about it, but it's not off-putting by any means. It's short. The recording is rich and full, which does all these new works proud. This is a really well-recorded album. I wrote here, God knows where the folk melody is in this. I think it might be the shape might be where the folk element is. I don't really know. But the atonal harmony wipes it all out. It's hard to really pull out. I guess I could hear it again a few times and work out where it is, but we'll see. Okay, the second one, To Endeka, which is a study on the composer Yannis Konstantinidis. The work is 44 miniatures, so I guess it's one of those. And this one's really pretty. It's arpeggios, simple melody, complete opposite of the lullaby. And the folk element is easily audible, easygoing, and enjoyable. And the third work is Little Apple Tree, study on Manos Hadjidakis. I hope I'm saying these Greek names in a way that you'll be able to say, oh, it's that guy. Okay, Hadjidakis' work is that's based on his Little White Shell. So this is called Little Apple Tree, which is the name of a folk song. This one starts off dramatically with arpeggiated ripple in the high end. I like those kind of like arpeggiated ripples on the piano. And an ominous ringing bass note. Once the repeated note accompaniment starts, we get the folk melody in the high end. Very warm and appealing. At the 51-second mark, we get a trill effect on the melody, which makes this piece sound very romantic. Okay, so kind of interesting set of 3 works. They're very different stylistically. Anyway, 4th track, Yannis A. Papaioannou. 1910 to 1989, so 20th century composer here. This piece is called The Plain with Poplars. It's his Prelude number 16, written in 1939. When we hear those years, we want to think about what's going on. This is the beginning of World War II, 1939, when this was written. Okay, and it's written during his, the composer's impressionist, this is in quotation marks, stylistic period. There's lots of extended tonal harmony, parallel sonorities, so I think of Debussy when I read that. Pentatonicism, that's rock and roll right there, folk music, that kind of thing. And pitch centricity, so that's modal music basically, because you're not being pulled towards a certain tone. The composer has to organize the notes so that you're kind of circling around this note that he wants you to focus on. This piece alludes to serene natural scenery. It's got a mellow, slow, almost jazzy ballad opening, immediately appealing in its gentleness and pentatonic harmony, and generally very pretty. Worth hearing. Give this go to this one. Track 4. Next, track 5. Argyris Gounaris. 3. Idiomela. That's a cool word. 1956 is the composition date. Incidentally, Gounaris' dates are 1924 to 2011. Okay, so not a contemporary composer. These are 3 short miniatures to be played as an uninterrupted gesture. And the title, an idiomela, or idiomelum, I guess, I don't know. It's a Greek word, so it wouldn't be, I don't know. Anyway, the title refers to a Byzantine troparion. A troparion is a short hymn of one stanza, which is heard in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it has its own melody and rhythm. So it's not like set by the church, I guess. So it denotes the piece's individuality here. Idiomela would be, this is an individual work that isn't really based on anything else. The dedication is to the memory of Eric Satie. You might recognize him from the Gymnopédie or the Je te veux valse. There's some really famous piano works by him, which indicates the work's character and compositional features: simplicity, brevity, economy of musical resources, and non-sentimentalism. Satie was really into that. It's got a soft, tentative opening with some atonal sounding harmony, but it's pretty gentle. Don't let that put you off. The second idiomela starts at 30 seconds. They're very short and is more harmonically demanding on the ear. At 55 seconds, we get the last of the idiomela. It sounds like a mode or a whole tone scale. It's got this sort of gravityless sound that sounds like it's just going to spin out into eternity. There's a ticking bass and some expressive repeated notes in the right hand. Okay, next we get to Nikos Skalkatis, probably the most famous Greek composer of the in classical music anyway. There's some others who did a lot of film music and also classical music. Skalkatis' years are 1904 to 1949, and this is his Passacaglia, which the very first work we heard is based on. This is the 15th of Skalkatis' 32 piano pieces. It has a short... It's a set of pieces called 32 piano pieces. He wrote other ones as well. It has a short two-bar theme in 9/8 and 20 short continuous variations. It's got an austere form. Austere is a good word to describe Skalkatis' music, and which gives it a neoclassical quality that is balanced with dense atonal harmonies, complex rhythmic service elements, and dramatic climaxes. All right, the harmony in this work is, in fact, pretty dense, but it's played quietly at the beginning, and it's not too hard to follow the gestures. The variations are seamless and hard to count, as they should be in a Passacaglia, because it's supposed to be almost like kaleidoscopic, the way the music keeps changing. The piece sounds pretty by a minute and 30 seconds, and suddenly shifts to something more liquid. Intriguing juxtapositions of rhythmic figures in the individual notes occur. At 2 minutes and 39 seconds, we get a lively variation that's imposing. Then something more desperate at 3 minutes and 8 seconds. The variation at 3 minutes and 30 seconds is intriguing to my ear, with its quick bass movement and rippling arpeggios in the right hand. At 3 minutes 45 seconds, we're in some kind of triplet rhythm, strongly outlined. And the variations go on, and by the 6-minute mark, we get straight chords that then break up. The piece ends ominously on a ringing chord in the bass, its harmonics allowed to sound. This is a wartime work, by the way. 1940 is the composition date. Next, Kostas Nikitas, track 7, 1940 to 1989. So he's another 20th century composer. This is an andante, which is the second movement from his piano sonata, written in 1966. The piano sonata is characterized by chromatic neotonal harmony and neoclassical formal design. The andante is distinctive for the dramatic opposition between triadic minor chords and dissonant non-triadic sonorities. I rather like the descending, almost romantic, but completely unsentimental opening. The movement feels stuck in its tonality until about the first minute, when it goes into something a little more unconventional. So I guess the dissonance kind of jolts it free from where it was tonally. The rhythm becomes more active in the first minute until it breaks up into individual figures from 1 minute and 30 seconds on. We get some descending figures in the second minute, which start ascending at about 2 minutes 20 seconds or so. The way the material keeps morphing into some new setting of the material draws the ear. I found myself wondering what would come next, and it ends with an arpeggiated ripples going up the piano and a grounding bass note. Yeah, this work kept me guessing. I rather enjoyed it on an intellectual level. Track 8, Christos Samaras, born in 1956. This is his prelude from the year 2005. Samaras' prelude reflects the personalities of the composer's friends, students, and colleagues. And we're going to get 4 of these, and they represent people. The first one, this one from 2005 on track 8, is pretty harp-like, with a lot of arpeggiated figures. Some manic, some sweet, some odd. The work's moods swing rather suddenly and dramatically, and the changes are sudden and noticeable, but fit together. And one imagines that Samaras has a keen ear and eye for people's behavioral characteristics. I kind of imagine this person must be someone whose sort of personality changes rather rapidly. Fun to imagine this who that might be here. The ninth track is from 2014, a prelude, much quieter and muted than the first, and it proceeds in traditional harmony, I think. It sounds more or less like traditional harmony, unless there's modal stuff in there. And is even calm and touching. It's shorter than the first. The prelude from 2003, track 10, has a muted sound again, but it starts with a more active arpeggiated figure that cascades downwards at 28 seconds. There's a nice change to the intimate modal melody at 1 minute and 15 seconds. It's brief, and we get into some more turbulent material, though gently turbulent, at 1 minute and 30 seconds. Ends softly, but inconclusively. The last of the preludes is dated 2019, and this one has cascading downward arpeggios punctuated by accented chords. Most of the work is arpeggiated material. There are thunderous bass chords that are around 1 minute and 20 seconds as the arpeggiated right-hand material continues. And that's that. Track 12, Vasilis Kitsos, born in 1972. And this piece is called Of Every Breath, ... with quotation marks around it. It was written in 2017. This work has a narrative quality and an extra musical reference to the poem by Sharvari G.C. that gives the piece its name. The basis of the melodic and harmonic material is a tetrachord created from the composer's son's name cipher. In other words, it's not traditional harmony. That's all you need to know. The structure echoes the work's hidden dramatic program. So it's dramatic, but we don't know what the story is. Okay, we hear the tetrachord right at the beginning, split into 2 attacks. There's some rumbling figures in the bass and hints of soft chords in the right hand. The piece quietens at 1 minute and 50 seconds and starts a new approach with very quiet chords and gently taken figures in the right hand. It sounds like the una corda pedal is down due to the muted notes that we're getting from the piano. There's some louder, very brief episodes, but by the end, everything is quiet and gentle, as if not wanting to disturb. It ends on an inconclusive note, fading away into the silence. Track 13, Stella dall'Ampira. Just the name of this piece told me I wasn't going to like it. Desaturated reflections. It sounds kind of mathematical, and it is. I once saw a meme on Facebook which had this old like 1950s style teacher telling her class, And then the devil said, let's add the alphabet to mathematics. I understand completely. This piece kind of reminded me of that. Anyway, the structure of the piece, this was written in 2020, so it's a pretty recent piece. She's probably going to hear this. My apologies. Anyway, the structure of the piece is formed by musical gestures depicting light reflections and by harmonic material inspired by desaturated colors. Melodies grow out of the texture before merging into it again. Now, it sounds like a cool idea, but I thought this piece had some pretty ear-grating harmonies. It sounds very mid-20th century, like post-war, and I'm wondering if there's a system by which this was put together, because like 12-tone music or something like that, because back in the day there was, and I'm kind of wondering how she put this together. If there's some mathematical formula being used, or if it really is just observation.
I don't know. I was struck by the harmonies here too. I mean, now as we get later in this recording, there's a lot of different type of harmonic things happening. But this one stood out for its harmonic ideas for sure. Yeah.
It has a mathematical quality to it, meaning it sounds sort of calculated. Nothing wrong with that, but the piercing nature of the sound kind of pushed me away. It ends suddenly, so I don't want to damn this piece. It's just not really it's something I really am going to gravitate towards, this kind of music. Some people really love it. So anyway, track 14, Glyceria Kotola, Anamnesis Prelude. Anamnesis means memory in Greek. And this has deconstructed fragments of pieces like Beethoven's Sonata Opus 109 and Schnittke's Piano Concerto, forming the basis of a piece of memorabilia. I'm just going to have to take this composer's word for it because I couldn't identify any of that. I guess they broke it down pretty severely. Very slow with warm tones and lots of quick arpeggiated trill figures. A lot of the work relies on long-held notes in the middle of the keyboard, evoking the long ago. I'm not familiar with the Schnittke Piano Concerto, but the Beethoven is so fragmented I couldn't identify it at all. Or I could sense it only by its sound, if it's kind of got that more romantic, more kind of traditional harmony sound. It ends on a gentle repeated high note, and it's kind of an amorphous piece. Track 15, Dimitris Ekonomou. This piece is called Sync, and it was written in 2013. I didn't write this composer's years down. In fact, I think I stopped at about this point. Anyway, they're all contemporary composers. This piece deals with the audio aspects that occur from disruption, interference, looping, and distortion of sequential textural transformations by simulating post-digital aesthetics in the composition of acoustic music. Listen to that 10 times and maybe you'll understand it. I don't know what that means. Anyway, Sync explores the idea of a delay effect applied in each note separately with a different repetition period for each one. It starts on the piano's highest note, and the music descends gradually while transforming in color and harmony. I thought this work was really cool, actually. It's nothing traditional, and it's kind of original, I thought, too. It's a bit of a challenge on the ear, but I was intrigued by the form. The repeating figures and juxtaposed rhythms, the progress down the keyboard is easy to follow. That'll draw your ear right away. And what the notes about the work say is exactly what you hear. I was laughing about it before, but that is what happens. It sounds like it might be fun to play, but it also sounds like it would take some work. It sounds pretty hard, especially rhythmically. Georgios Sakalieros, Pause Est from 2012. This was written during the Greek economic crisis of 2009 to 2018. And the notes say the piece unfolds an untypical gestalt imposed to creativity and vivacity. And a gestalt is an organized whole that is more than the sum of its parts. So it's a psychological term. Imposed to creativity and vivacity by the unforeseen eventualities of an individual's life. So in other words, I think what that means is that the coronavirus pandemic happened and this guy's creativity went to this completely unexpected place that was more than he thought it would be. I think. That's how I'm reading that. The faint recollection of the enjoyable past, like in Ravel's La Valse, meets with an uncanny present. Musical structure and syntax ascribed to both memory and hope. A lot of works about memory on this. This piece starts pleasantly enough with a friendly-sounding harmonic gesture that suddenly introduces jarring elements as early as 20 seconds in. I could swear I heard prepared piano notes at about the 1-minute mark, or that's just the sound of the piano high in its register. I couldn't really tell. The piece moves very slowly with a lot of silences. It progresses from episode to episode spasmodically. We hear those harpsichord-sounding prepared piano notes just after the 3-minute mark again, where the music sounds troubled, except for very brief moments when it starts freely waltzing in 3/4, as just after the 4-minute mark you can hear that. There are lots of drifting chords and silences otherwise, and the chiming prepared chord returns again at 4 minutes and 50 seconds. This piece goes through many styles of playing in the same piece, really, and it ends by just drifting off on the surface of its quiet, sustained chords. Track 17, Orestes Papaioannou, not the same guy as the earlier one, who was this guy, Yanis Papaioannou. I wonder if they're related. Anyway, the notes don't tell us. This is called Dance, and it's movement 2 from his work Rhythmology, which is a very cool name. 2018. Okay, so a pretty recent work. The original piece has 3 miniature movements experimenting with the perception of time and the use of rhythm as a tool for musical expression. In this movement, a rhythmical ostinato is juxtaposed with a linear walking bass-like movement. It's written in dense counterpoint. The motifs are exposed in various registers, mirrored, developed, and deconstructed, according to the notes. According to me, dense is a good word to describe the harmony of this piece. There's a rapidly played bass figure that accompanies right-hand chords. It's actually kind of interesting and sounds really hard to play. So, kudos to the pianist here. Just ends on a random note in the scale it's playing. And the final piece, track 18, Dimitris Marinidis, Shadow Clock Lullaby. Lovely title.
Nice title.
From 2013. This is the final part of his work, 4 homage etudes for solo piano. So it's an etude, and there are 2 overlapped distinctive musical layers being combined, creating a fragile harmonic environment on top of which a soft rain of musical droplets is falling constantly. That's not my image. That's the booklet. It's a gentle, slow piece with a kind of timed, a dripping quality to the combined piano tone and rhythm. It's worth hearing just for that. It's a nice effect. It's not something you hear often on the piano. The 2-minute and 30-second duration of the piece continues in this vein. It's not unattractive, and the tone picture it paints interests me. Kind of like a big clock, kind of like, and it's just sort of, working its way through the hours. The piece ends on one of the repeated tones it's been playing, giving the illusion that you've walked away and the piece is still going on. Anyway, that's the end of the album. It's got fantastic recorded piano sound throughout by this small unknown label, and the performances are all you could wish for in this music. Let's give the man behind the microphone a shout out. That is Kostas Kontos at the Music Technology Lab of the School of Music Studies of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. He did the recording, editing, and mastering of the album, and you've got to do my album because it sounds great. It's really good. All works are presented with a deep understanding and an excellent interpretative quality that puts them across to the listener. As the works themselves, they're all solid. As far as enjoying them, I found it to be a bit of a mixed bag, although some of them I really did like a lot. And that's really the way I like music. I don't really want to know what's coming next, and it's some I liked, some I didn't like, so it was entertaining all the way through for that. And they were all short enough that, if you're really suffering through any of them, they're over fast enough. So I'd give this a listen if the idea interests you. Yeah,
I found it, mostly kind of curiosities with this. Well, they're not all contemporary, strictly, as you say, but you're going to get some modern sounds here. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them sound actually kind of pretty. Some of them are interesting. Some of them are gratingly annoying. Some of them are baffling. And you don't know what's going to come next, but they're all really short. so you don't need a great attention span to go through, but you'll be really surprised at what comes next in the programming. So it's kind of fun. And I guess, especially if you're a piano player and you like, modern to contemporary things, you probably be interested in this a lot. And if you're just a fan of hearing sounds and trying to figure out what they are, you might like this too. Also, the descriptions are kind of interesting and baffling as well too. So yeah, it's kind of a fun little listen to see what's going on.
I need a job writing these notes because there are so many like cliches that these writers, people it's writing terrible, booklet notes use. They're just so horrible. A rhythmic tool. I don't like hearing about tools when I'm reading about music.
It's a metronome,
just get that word out of there. Yeah,
a rhythmic tool. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but it helped my interest through, and it made me chuckle a few times, and the lullaby and some other things. So. But
I found that lullaby to be ironic somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, and just the titles and descriptions are interesting too. But you get a mix of lots of different kind of harmonic approaches, rhythmic things, funny rumbling, kind of other devices of composition that you'll try to figure out. So give it a listen, and you can do it all at once. It's broken up, or you can take little pieces of it. You can listen to this anyway.
Yeah, and if you're a pianist, you might find a new piece to play in here. There's some good stuff.
I mean, you can't get much more cool of a title than Shadow Clock Lullaby. I mean, that's pretty neat. Yeah.
Although it does sound kind of like a rhythmic challenge. We'll see. If you wanted the challenge, it's good. All right. Last of the classical recordings, and this is kind of a loosely kind of... This isn't really a classical recording very much, but it's by Christos Tzifakis, born in 1969, and it's called Flamenco Odyssey, a Mediterranean guitar cycle. This was written between the years 2007 and 2018 and arranged here by Michail Travlos. It's on the Naxos label, and it was just released recently. Tzifakis was born in Athens, Greece, into a musical family. His uncles were folk musicians and his grandmother a classical pianist, and it sounds like it was a really important influence for him because he's marrying folk, not Greek folk music, but in some cases, but mostly flamenco and classical elements into the same piece. Tzifakis plays the guitar because he believed it united these two musical worlds, and he'll attempt to do that in this piece too. He studied classical music in the Netherlands and then went to Spain and studied flamenco guitar. When he returned to Athens, he studied theory and composition and jazz, so classical flamenco jazz. This guy's a monster. He's highly knowledgeable in this music, and as we're going to hear, he doesn't... a lot of we always complain that when classical musicians play jazz, they don't really get the right feel often. This guy has all the right feels. I mean, he really does sound like a flamenco guitarist. It's really amazing. He's got a fantastic technique. He's a great player.
I've always thought, with flamenco, it's a special kind of music that has its own sort of compositional structure and aesthetics, and you can't really look at it from outside of that and analyze it or hope to play it without getting an insight into the culture and stepping in. You need that real direct experience, I think, to be able to really understand what's going on in flamenco. I mean, I love the music, but I won't claim to understand it, well enough to ever think I could perform it or something,
Yeah, I think when we hear flamenco music, what we love about it, you don't even have to understand it. You understand passion, and that's what you're hearing and seeing in the dancing. It's pretty clear. So that's pretty universal, without the it's very specific national elements that's in it. Okay, in describing this work, Flamenco Odyssey, Tzifakis mentions that Odyssey is a voyage, and he and all of us are Odysseus, who went on this voyage. Going through adventures to reach the harbor of self-realization. Oh boy, sounds like pop psychology. He thinks of this work as moments in a walk in which he observes the different forms of flamenco from the point of view of a traveler who carries within him the flavors and timbres of both Eastern and Western cultures. So that's the whole world right there. You know?
It's everything.
Okay. He's like this emperor, like, looking at his realm there. Flamenco dancers and contemporary choreographers have created dances for most of these tracks. During the adventure that was the long changing and readapting of these tracks over time, Tzifakis says he had the poem Ithaca by the Greek poet Constantine P. Cavafy in mind, Cavafy, if anybody wants to look that up. It's a nice poem. It's written in the Naxos book, and basically it encourages the reader of the poem to go on a lifelong journey of discovery and hope to arrive back at your own personal Ithaca in old age, full of wisdom and health. Wisdom and wealth, sorry.
Oh,
health too,
better.
I guess, but it's wisdom and wealth. Okay. Tzifakis has some pretty evocative program notes to go with the music. The work wasn't recorded live in the studio due to financial constraints. So, over time, Tzifakis recorded the instruments one by one, overdubbing himself and having a lot of guests on it too. The editing and mixing took almost 2 years to complete. All right, so we're going to have to keep that in mind when we listen to this, because I had very mixed feelings about this recording. First of all, the guitar playing on this record is absolutely fantastic. He's a great player. He's got just an astonishing technique, and a good feel for flamenco as well.
Mm-hmm.
He really does sound like he's in the idiom, and even when he plays like sort of jazzy things as well, and when he's playing classical music too, classical sounding music too. The problem I had with this is the recording itself. It's a good recording, but it's really pumped up in the studio. The sounds are sort of larger than life, and to be honest, that rather put me off. This kind of sounded more like it's going for some kind of pop appeal, and that's fair. If people, if he thinks he's going to reach the audience like that, that's fine with me. But it's not going to do much for me, or I think for traditional classical listeners, unless they're willing to just sort of put that aside for a minute. Anyway, let's just have a look here. The first movement, or they're not really movements, they're sort of individual pieces making up this whole. It's called Sailing, Fandango con Bulleria, which is Fandango and Bulleria are two dances. It's sort of like an overture, according to Tzifakis. It's a fantasy on two Spanish dances, 3/4 rhythm. The Fandango rhythm reminds listeners of the sea waves, the 3/4 rhythm, and the tempo doubles in the Bulleria. The beginning of the voyage. Okay, this has a string-heavy backdrop. Now, the strings are a virtual orchestra, and I had, except for the guitar, the bass, and the percussion, which are all really pumped up, everything else, the strings, there's a live violin and a live flute, sound really processed by the orchestra to the point where they have no attack. They're just sort of sounds that start and stop. You don't really hear a person sort of like actually blowing into the flute or, drawing the bow across the violin. You just hear the sound that it makes. I didn't like that. Anyway, the virtual orchestra here is Christos Kasanakis. I should probably mention who's performing on this album. I didn't actually write it in my notes here, but it's Christos Tzifakis on the guitar, and he's also on the last track playing all three guitars overdubbed. Evangelos Statholopoulos on the flute, Evgeny Bukov on the violin, Panagiotis Bourizanis on electric bass, Nikos Kapelidis on drums, Janis Papagiannoulis on percussion, and also claps on some of the tracks, Christos Kasanakis on virtual string orchestra and recorded samples and programming. So that's everybody who's on this. Okay, the next piece, let's see here. So you have this string-heavy backdrop accompanying the very forward guitar, And the thing that strikes you right away is what a guitarist this guy is. I mean, he really draws you right in. He fits well in the flamenco style. There's a very present percussion effect and an electric bass that just kind of oozes out of the speaker.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, like some bass blob, you know, kind of. Anyway, if you remember like Peter Gabriel's song Sledgehammer, it kind of has that sort of liquidy, sort of very full bass sound. You know,
it's a huge and modern sound of electric bass that comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some lightning fast guitar playing on the fandango. The recording is rich, especially on the low end, and captures the attack on the guitar exceptionally well. In fact, some listeners will say that he's far too far forward. He's definitely the star of this performance, and everybody else is there to just back him up. Gorgeous playing throughout. The Buleria starts at the 6-minute mark. Actually, it probably starts earlier than that, and I missed the intro, but there you go. The next track, El Greco's Footsteps, was actually my favorite one on the album. This is for solo guitar. The story of this is El Greco, who is a painter, kind of like Odysseus himself, according to the notes, set out from his homeland of Crete and eventually reached Spain, where he created his masterpieces, his paintings. This piece traces El Greco's trajectory. It starts with improvisations of ancient Cretan songs, which are called rizitika in Greek, and risa means root. Riza means root. And it ends in a Spanish dance. We're always going to get to Spanish things on this album. The intoxicating chords in the guitar at the beginning have a lot of echo on them, as if recorded deep in a cave, but it's not unappealing. It kind of gives it like this aged sound, like we're kind of hearing like an echo from the distant past. The modal harmony really drew me in. These are great modes. I really liked hearing these. They had an odd, reaching into the past quality. The Spanish dance is slowish and about the same tempo as the improvisations, but the harmony has subtly changed to a more Spanish mode. It's really clever composing here. It's an excellent composition and a very compelling track. The solo guitar playing is outstanding, and we remain in that cavern-like acoustic throughout. It makes the work sound larger than life. If you're kind of like a purist, you're not going to like the sound quality. And in fact, I think it would have been nice to hear this without the pumped-up effect on it. But I liked it enough. There's no problem there. A more solid rhythm develops for the Spanish dance in the last minute. Okay, track 3, Telemachus Tango. Telemachus was Odysseus' son, and at the beginning of the Odyssey, he's a passive young man, not taken seriously by anyone. But then there's a moment when he's awakened and makes up his mind to take matters in hand, and this tango represents just after that moment when he wakes up. The recording quality of the guitar has become brighter and less echoey here. There's a flute in the background simulating outdoor birds, and indeed the entire composition, led by the guitar, has a determined, ready-to-take-action quality to it. By 2 minutes in, we have a Spanish-sounding dance in the guitar. I should mention these they're not really classical works, though there are classical elements in them. It's more a fusion of styles that comes across as something modern-sounding and European, at least in the way it's recorded. I would think of this more as like a world music recording with a lot of classical, or art music pretensions to it. But there's nothing pretentious about it. The playing backs it up. There's flamenco hand clapping in it, and it's an odd marriage of tradition and contemporary sound recording. Fourth movement, plegaria, means prayer in Spanish. This uneasy introduction reflects a restless spirit which is eventually soothed and reaches pure articulation. There's some intricate playing at the beginning of this piece. The guitar is more impassioned here in its statements, all taken with great presence and strength. Guitar is heavily spotlighted, though without lots of reverb. There is some, though. Track 5, Bacchus Solea. Ancient Greeks associated Bacchus with the emergence of drama and ritual. Bacchus rises from the shadows of the underworld and chaos, bringing with him unutterable secrets. This track attempts to create an image of him dancing a solea, one of the archetypal dances of flamenco. It has the flute and droning virtual string orchestra accompanying a kind of minimal guitar, playing syncopated chords. Now, the sound here kind of drove me crazy because the flute and the strings are way in the back, and you're hearing them kind of sounding artificial. And the guitar, you hear every attack on it. It's far up front. So I kind of would have liked to have heard them a little more on the same sort of playing, in the same stage, let's say. This morphs into a guitar-led dance. The percussion is right up front and actually sounds like it's in the room with you. It's so clearly recorded. Okay, sixth movement or six pieces, Escobilla, which follows the solea that comes before. It's the part of the flamenco dance when dancers move faster, showing off their skill. There are flamenco hand claps at the beginning of this, and they're altered electronically by the recording, which I didn't like again. I tend not to like when things are electronically altered unless it's somehow integral to the piece. All right? If we ever come across a recording like that, I will let you know so that you know what I mean. There's a bass and strumming guitar set the rhythm, and the hand claps seem preternaturally fast. It sounds like this is manipulated in the studio. It might not be, but I just kind of got that feeling. We hear the flute carrying a lot of the melodic material, but he's recessed in the mix. The strumming guitar's up front. This was weird. The flute has the melody, and he's not, like, spotlighted. This composition is all about the guitar, and I'm wondering how he can play this work in its entirety at a live performance. He's going full on throughout. This must be tiring, because this piece is often played on stage, like one piece after the other. The guitar just never stops playing, and he's playing all these, he's ripping out all these, like, just lightning fast, fiery sort of, phrases. It's really astonishing, really. Seventh movement, let me see here. Nostalgia Ballade. This represents yearning for return. Virtual strings sounding new agey here, and they accompany the guitar strumming. All of this sounds slightly faster than is natural. There's a manicness to the speed here. This isn't quite ballad speed. I feel the use of electronics makes a lot of the emotion that could be here sort of disappear. It just sort of takes any emotional element away. The guitar sound is enhanced, as it has been throughout, by studio manipulation, meaning it's pumped up. So he's up front. And at this point, this is the seventh track of a 9-track album, and I needed a break at this point because it was starting to sound kind of samey, and the sound field that he's using, the whole sound quality, was really making me tired. It kind of felt like an assault, sort of, despite the really amazing playing. The album sounds to me like it's on speed. It's on a drug. It's moving really fast, and it sounds like it's moving faster now. Okay. Anyway, the next day, I resumed with track 8. This is called Baghdad Buleria, named because the melody was composed during the bombarding of Baghdad, and for those in the city, it was the starting point of an anguished odyssey with the sole aim of surviving. This is the longest track on this album, at almost 10 minutes. It's pretty intricate, and it's got a complex guitar line opening it with those virtual strings accompanying. There's some cool percussion underneath the guitar's rapidly repeating arpeggio figure. I really don't like the virtual strings. They're emotionless, just a wash of sound, kind of providing a harmony or like the sound to play against. Sort of like in Indian music, those instruments in the back that kind of set the harmonic range for the soloists. The name of them isn't coming to me now. Impressive playing again by Tzifakis in his solo after a minute and 30 seconds. He plays here an unseparatable blend of flamenco and classical styles. There's an atmospheric interlude after 4 minutes and 30 seconds featuring the violin and flute. And the problem here is the sound is altered, so we can't hear their natural sounds or attacks clearly. So we don't really get any emotion registering there. They're smoothed out just there for their sound. They both play the material well. The more aggressive opening comes back, and we head towards the end. And the ending minute of the piece features the backing instrument with the guitar absent or playing in the background. The final part, Alter Ego Tango. It says this is a festive work, and he calls this a combination of blues rock influences and the rhythm of tango. Hand claps, though, suggest flamenco to me, and to an extent, so does the guitar playing. It's got a happy ending, but this sounds more like a Mediterranean dance and its circling figures than anything that can be thought of as jazz or rock. Maybe he thinks of the slide guitar effects as blues, because he gets some slight sliding guitar. Anyway, by the second minute, we're squarely in Spanish harmonic and rhythmic territory. The piece lightens up in its final minutes, still sounding like a dance. It fades out at the end, a studio fade, not a live one, which I thought was kind of odd too. Like we're distancing ourselves from an ongoing party. All right. Well, first of all, I want to say this work. He didn't have money to record it. It took a long time. He laid down a lot of the parts himself. So we have to kind of give this a little bit of space when we think about just the effort that was put into just recording this. So it's good that it was recorded. I really what do I want to say here? Preferred a live performance, something maybe recorded at one of the earlier, performances of this. But again, he probably couldn't afford to make it, which is why we've got this. So I don't really want to. I want to keep that in mind while I'm saying all this. I wouldn't call this really a classical work. It's a fusion of different styles, which is what Tzifakis said he does. He wants to, and why he plays the guitar in the first place. It's all immediately enjoyable music, and it's not a bad thing to be listening to when we're all having to voyage on our sofas, if any of us are still doing that because of any lockdowns. All the tracks are uplifting. They're light. They're easy on the ears. And I didn't really feel like there was like a through line connecting all of it, but he's definitely got a narrative there. Not necessarily musically though. They're all separate adventures on the way to their home point. The different tracks don't really differ all that much from each other. There's only minimal contrast between tracks. What really stands out in this album is Tzifakis' amazing playing. He encompasses all the styles well. He's the real thing. So you'd want to listen to this for him. Yeah.
Amazing guitar playing. The compositions are really interesting, and the orchestration is impressive too. It's just that the recording, the way that it has to be processed and the way that he had to record it, sort of piecemeal, gives it that kind of overproduced and a little bit unnatural quality to the rest of the instruments, and then some of the balance issues you mentioned. That said, it's very impressive sort of journey, this Odyssey that he has, various kind of influences and backgrounds influencing what he's doing on guitar. His technical playing and expressiveness is really first-rate and impressive. It just makes you wish that you could have seen, or there was a recording of some of the live performances with dancers and things that the notes mentioned, because that would have been great to see. Let's hope he gets another chance to do this with all live musicians and things in a studio or in a live performance, because it is very interesting, and the guitar playing is really amazing on here.
Yeah. All right, and here we are, Greek jazz, ready
jazz
to
time,
go
right?
into this.
Yeah, so we've taken a dive into the Greek jazz world and come up with some interesting connections.
I have to say, yeah, we
and,
have.
We're going to start out with sort of like the connecting figure in a lot of what we've discovered. We may even call him the godfather of modern Greek jazz here in our first recording. And this is an interesting one, too. Apparently, as we learned from Iakovos yesterday, he's done a lot of recording in the past year. This recording has got some interesting content and programming on it, too. And we're speaking of the great pianist and organist George Kontrafouris with his trio. And the recording we've got here is called Deep South. It's on Puzzle Music label. And he's also got another one earlier this year you should check out, too. It's a tribute to Bill Evans with the same trio. This one has got a kind of interesting thematic programming appeal. Now, I should say, in our previous foray into Greek jazz, if you go back to episode 61, Mallet Maestros, we featured the recording called Long Way Home by Greek vibraphonist Dimitris Angelakis. And this trio was the backing for his recording. And so we've got all the same players.
Mention, that's another album I bought, by the way.
Yeah, you like that one a lot. It's a really good album.
Yeah.
So we've got the same trio here, And we also heard him on Yako's Safe Place organ trio album, playing organ, right? And so here he is on his own release with his trio. And so he was also born in Athens, Greece, 1967. He studied classical piano at the National Conservatory in Athens. At a young age, he also took up jazz and improvised music. And he's got a bachelor's and master's degree in jazz performance from the Sibelius Academy in Finland. And then he's performed on piano and organ with lots of famous players in Europe and also internationally, American players too, including big names like David Liebman, Houston Pearson, Eric Alexander, Lou Donaldson, and a lot of others. So maybe he's one of the most experienced and well-known Greek jazz musicians out there.
One of the interesting things about the album is it's got an interesting cover. What is that? Is that a shell on the cover?
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't
not
really
sure.
make that out.
It's kind of interesting.
It kind of caught my eye, so I wanted to point it out.
Check it out and tell us what it is if you know.
Listeners, check it out.
Yeah, there's another cover I'll mention later too that kind of catches the eye in this program. Yeah,
I'd probably
for different reasons. Also, we've got on bass Kimon Karotzis and a drummer we're going to hear twice this evening, Jason Waster, who was born in Athens as well, but studied in the U.S. and did some playing, mixing it up with U.S. jazz players too. And he's a young guy. I wouldn't say youngster. I guess he's about 26 still. That's pretty young. But he's got a lot of mature playing and intensity in his playing that we'll hear on both these albums tonight. And then what makes this album kind of unique is the addition on the latter half by guitarist Babis Teropoulos when we go to the deep south that matches the name of the album. Anyway, we're going to start out with a different idea. It's called a concerto for jazz piano. So there's kind of three movements here dealing with time. So it's called Through Time. And the first movement of that is called In the Present. These are all Kontrafouris' original compositions. This one starts out with a repetitive piano riff in a 5-beat meter. Bass and drums join in, and Kontrafouris launches into a melody, keeping the rhythm, the rhythmic feel of the original riff going as he goes along. The rhythm breaks up into kind of a 6-beat pattern with a riff that you hear 4 times. And then it goes back to the 5-beat section. I'm going to keep you counting here if you're trying to figure out what's going on. There's a cool lower bass line doubled in the left hand of the piano. I love that kind of thing when you hear that, left hand piano and the bass going together. Then a final section of rising syncopated riffs that build tension before a return to the original melody section and a repeat through those other sections. This time there's a little section also where the drums break the rhythm to work, accenting the phrases of the bass and piano together. Kontrafouris gets a solo next over the pulsing 5-beat figures of Karotzis. He focuses on rhythmically even phrases in the right hand with super clean articulation. He's really got a nice touch and can, just
kind of put me in mind of Vince Guaraldi. Actually.
Yeah, pull out those individual notes. He builds it up with more rhythmically punctuated ideas after that, and it goes into the rising syncopated riff idea, again with some explosive drum fills from Waster. Then it comes down softer into the melody section, again to build up once more. They riff out for a long time on that, and then Waster gets an extended and heavier drum solo that's kind of alluded to in the previous time going through, and push right to the end with a final closing phrase and piano chord chime to finish it off. So that was the present, and track 2 is called In the Past. This one's got a slow piano riff intro that's now we're into 4 beats, a little more conventional. The bass joins in unison. Waster joins in with light brushwork as Kontrafouris adds a chiming melody on top of that. The slow unified movement is tight with nice rhythmic bass fills from Karotzis. He digs deep in the low bass range for pairs of notes as Kontrafouris starts his piano solo with relaxed, and I called this gluey phrasing. What I meant by that is, in Japan we have foods that they call neba. They're foods with a stickiness to them. It's like okra and yamaimo, a Japanese mountain potato. And when you pull these foods out of some dish, I don't like these foods personally, but they
kind of like that too, the way they make the okra.
They have this sort of starchy stickiness that pulls them kind of back into the bowl that they're in. And I got this feeling with his phrasing that's, there's like a adhesive that is holding his fingers back to the keys, which results in this really kind of interesting sort of sticky phrasing. It's not out of time, but it's just that slight hesitation that creates a nice feel. When he goes through that, then trickles of notes, later some faster runs, nice development. Waster paints some really good cymbal textures behind that all nicely, and they work through the melody again with some repeats of the final phrase to take it to a close, and then some final piano chimes there too.
I wonder if he's going for like what they call Dilla time now. Like there was a hip hop producer, Jay Dilla, who kind of slightly sped up and slowed down his beats so they weren't quite in sync with the other instruments. I mean, maybe he's doing that. He's kind of got that idea.
I mean, there's various ways to play around time, and all players have their kind of approach. Some just people naturally sort of on a lazier kind of behind the beat feel. But I got the feeling that he pulled that out kind of on purpose. That little kind of, it's almost a weight or a pulling back that makes a really interesting human touch to that, and I really like that. 3 is in the future, so this ends out this set of concerto here through time, and this one kind of begins with a series of 8 chords on 1 and 4 of a 6/8 rhythm that become the bass. Wasser scratches out some subdivisions under that, and then Kontrafouris fills in the gaps with an elegant melody line with a lot of nice little ornaments on there. It pushes ahead with some more intensity and accent in the drums, but then it comes down for a final melody section. Kontrafouris takes a solo over the, again, very low and bouncy bass here. It's a nice swinging feel, and his piano articulation is clear and tasty. He adds some dazzling runs and punctuated chords too, and Waster helps to whip up things to a big climax of chords. Christos gets a bass solo. He gets down low before getting more melodic in the upper register. And they go through the melody again, Waster helping to push it to a big finish with intensity.
I wrote that the Gheraldi is strong in this one.
Oh, you thought so?
That waltz time always and this kind of playing really puts me in mind of Vince Gheraldi all the time.
Yeah. And we've got kind of a middle piece that breaks up the two larger sort of sets of works. And I guess this is a Greek, I don't know if it was a popular song or whatnot, but it's Elsa se fovome. And I don't know if it means something like Elsa, I'm afraid of you, or something like that.
Did you look it up?
Yeah, and you can find the recording, simple live things from the singer, Dionysus Savopoulos. This is a really jazzed up version compared to the original that you'll see there. It starts out with a repeated kind of rhythmic F note on the piano, and the bass keeps that rhythmic idea going with a kind of heartbeat thing that it picks up off from it. The melody goes through some nice rhythmic changes, different piano figures and bass lines. The harmonies are really nice on this tune, with some unexpected chords along the way. Christos gets a bass solo first, and he keeps the rhythms tight in his melodic lines. Then he gets a crying kind of bluesiness at the end. And then Kontrafouris is next, building the solo melody nicely, while he connects his ideas and shows some impressive smooth runs here too, before they go back to the original melody. Then we had a concerto. First, this is a suite at the end here.
But
and it's
the good kind of suite.
The good kind of suite. It's called The Deep South. It's a kind of road trip to various locations in the South, and this is where we get
Of the south of the U.S., we should say.
South of the U.S., not the south of Greece. And this is where we get the dirty slide guitar pyrotechnics of Babnis Travlos joining in here. So the first stop on the Deep South tour is Clarksdale, Mississippi. It begins with, as these tracks do, it's kind of an affected, distant sound as if you're hearing it on a car radio or in another room. So you get this blues guitar coming in a kind of a muffled tone that starts things out. And then that transforms into an upfront piano from Kontrafouris to set the rhythm of the tune, in a standard recording quality for a slow 8-beat feel groove.
I've always fallen for that. I've always fallen for that effect. I really like it.
Oh yeah, that kind of
the modern, the old to the modern.
To the modern, yeah. Clicks from Worcester brings it in. Introduction of some dirty, bluesy slide guitar from Babis Travlos. There's a lot of space here. The guitar fills the gaps with crying slide licks. It also sounds like he's got a couple guitar things going on. He's got a resonator kind of sound, and then later more standard, smooth, bluesy electric licks. So this may have a couple tracks going on over this. Kontrafouris has been keeping rhythmic chord duty through the guitar, and then he gets his own time for some blues from about 4 minutes and 40 seconds. On the lifting harmonies of the bridge, he breaks away with some high-flying figures, and they really blow the blues away. It gets out of this kind of bluesy mood. Then it returns to the dirge of the groove that it began with Travlos giving some more tasty guitar licks from his kind of, what was that Forrest Gump line? The box of chocolates. That's what I feel his sound is. It's like every time I hear like a couple licks, then there's like, ooh, there's another tasty treat we haven't heard yet. And, ooh, there's a caramel lick. And this one, he's got all these like, little surprises in his guitar playing. Yeah. And then it ends off with a little more of that resonator sound for the final guitar phrases. The next track, we're going to go to New Orleans. And this time we start out with a faraway bluesy piano for the whole first minute. It's like a distant archive recording. Then Kontrafouris brings it up into the foreground, rising riff of chords, Worcester adding a big snare roll to kick into a beat. Travlos joins in with some more guitar and slide work. He really makes it cry with the slide and some raunchy riffs. Kontrafouris takes a solo then that builds rhythmic figures into jazzy runs, bluesy rolls, pounding chords. Then Travlos is back in for some more guitar. You really have to love the dirty tone and edge of the sound of the guitar. He gets a more jazzy in some of the phrases, and then he gets the wah-wah pedal going to add some more intensity on top of everything else. You're going to need a shower after this track because it's just so dirty and edgy. You're going to have to towel off here. Before we get to the end, then Kontrafouris chimes out some chords on this ending. And then we're going to go Alabama Bessemer for the last track. Travlos starts it out on guitar with some loose bluesy ideas, works into a pulsing rhythm of plucked figures and slides. Worcester kicks it into something different as the trio comes in on the more jazzy harmonized backing that has rising chords in an 8-beat pattern that's interesting. It's 3-3-2 in the phrasing. Travlos gets an extended, very nasty slide solo here. There's a break in form in 4 bars of 3 that hints at things to come. So it sort of goes from 8 to a 9 feel. But after the next break section, they stay in the 3 beats for a while in the section before they go back to the 3-3-2. So the meter underneath is changing, which makes it interesting. Kontrafouris gets a solo next, and this is much more modern and jazzy, going outside the harmonies on kind of fleeting and far-reaching runs. So it breaks out of that bluesy character. He gets some rolling right-hand figures, heavy left-hand chords before a final few dazzling runs. Then it's back to Travlos' slide for a short section before it comes down soft for some simple solo piano chords, and then builds again with simple harmonies, now in halftime, dirty and really bluesy groove. So the character changes, and then it's more simplistic in a blues style after that kind of jazzy harmonic start. Travlos has saved some final nasty crying slide ideas and licks for the end that fades into some faraway sounding blues note guitar. So, if you thought of it, you would say that dirty slide blues guitar and jazz piano won't go together. But these guys make it so fun that you can't resist. It's an interesting and exciting recording. And these two kind of larger related themes with the concerto at the beginning and the blues suite at the end, make a nice contrast. The trio locks in together nicely on all the pieces. Kontrafouris is, he's got this amazing technique and, beautiful phrasing, fabulous touch, interesting solo ideas. As I said, also check out his tribute to Bill Evans' recording from earlier this year, and then his organ work on the Yako organ trio. He's a well-rounded player, and it's hard not to be infatuated with his style and solos when he plays.
Yeah, it's an appealing album all the way through. I mean, I liked all of it. I thought it was kind of jarring though, like going from the jazz of the first 4 tracks and then like into what really was a blues suite, but it was all well taken. I really liked it a lot. It was fun, as you said, and it's all music after my own heart. I mean, I grew up with blues and rock and roll music, so it was appealing to listen to, and I really enjoyed the lightness of the earlier works on the album too.
Yeah, the timepieces were nice, and I liked the 5/4 piece, and I liked
I did too.
The playing around with the signatures and stuff. So it's an exciting one. As I said,
I like his harmonic choices though too, and his sound too. So it was really appealing. Yeah.
He's his organ playing and piano playing both capture different kind of parts of his musical personality, and the more I listen to his playing, the more I like it. And so hopefully we'll hear from more of his playing in the future. Next release, this one is a real little gem here. I only feel like I've scratched the surface of what's going on in here. And this is from the Spiral Trio. And this is on the Older Deck Records label, and it's called Broken Blue.
Yeah.
This came out at the end of April.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, it's a pretty complex record.
Very complex.
I've listened to this a few times.
Yeah.
But enjoyable. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, this is really.
It's not going to intellectually freeze you out or anything. It's really good, but it's got a lot of things to discover. Let's say
a lot going on here. Spiral Trio is a modern jazz piano trio based in Athens. They've been together for about a decade, performing around Greece and Europe, and this is their second recording. The first one being self-titled, on the same record label, I believe. And the trio is made up of Spiros Menesis, so hence the Spiral name from his first name for the trio. Arionis Giftakis on bass, and Anastasios Gounaris on drums. And this one really drew me in. Now, the other interesting thing about this album, a lot of the times, the problem with finding things on streaming internationally that I try to do every day, I'm combing through hundreds of releases, finding things. And when I do find something that I like, there's no information about it. I'm lucky if I can find who the musicians are, let alone find anything about them. Well, the Spiral Trio gives us lots of information and sort of imaginative or inspirational ideas about the sources of their music. So I will share them with you, since they've gone through the trouble to give those to listeners, even, who get across this music in the streaming medium. So they say, Broken Blue is a modern jazz album. We understand modern jazz and his approach to jazz improvisation characterized by abstraction, lack of figuration, asymmetry, dominance of the subjective element in the management of musical images, and constant and intense interaction between the soloist and accompanying musicians. There's a lot there, right? It continues. Yeah. We could also say something that many musicians describe somewhat more generally, that modern jazz is an approach that seeks more and more freedom in the management of all the musical materials that jazz improvisation deals with, namely melody, harmony, rhythm, phrasing, modes of narration and form. Broken Blue is an exploration of different episodes, different possibilities, or versions of such an approach. Each episode is an original composition written to tell a unique story, to create a distinct musical place.
And that it does.
Yeah. And in addition to that overall sort of description, each track they give a little description too. Wow. And, we'll see if that comes out in the sounds or not. We begin with the first track, Rubicon, and this is a Spiros Menissus original. It says it explores the lyrical, impressionistic aspect through a prism of elastic rhythm, abstraction, and chromaticism.
Ouch.
Wow. Yeah, ouch. Ouch, right. No, but anyway, that's what they say. And here's what I wrote down as I listened to it. It opens with piano and bass. Gifticus has a huge fat bass sound. That's what you're going to notice on this album, which I'll comment on when we get to the end. That really fills up the sound space with the bass. Gounaris joins in, painting faint brush textures on the drums. Menios plays the sparse melody and then lovely, delicate solo piano figures with clear articulation, flowing phrases in the upper register. Gifticus has many answering counterlines, as if they're having a conversation throughout, before they even get to his own bass solo. He has a very nuanced attack to his bass notes, and the phrasing is beautiful. Menios plays the delicate melody for us again after the bass solo to finish it out, and it ends on an unresolved chord. It makes you want to go back and hear this again. I got the lyrical quality they mention, and also this sort of impressionistic form, hinting at, other ideas that are sort of only sketched in here. But very interesting, open type of sound here that I liked.
And some very cool, unexpected chord changes in this piece, too, that really kind of struck me. I said this was chill.
Chill, yeah. Track 2 is Hig, H-I-G. This is Gounaris' composition. Their description is characterized by timbral harmony, serving a playing style permeated by nervousness, a tinge of angst, energy, and extroversion. I don't know. Sounds like a horoscope.
It's better just to listen, really.
Yeah,
I mean, it's cool that they're
doing
it, but still,
Anyway, the drums started out with some cymbals, syncopated line doubled in the bass and piano left hand, leads to a more forcefully accented section before the bass line returns. Menios launches into a piano solo. His lines focus on rhythmic ideas and create a tentative expectation as they build an excitement to faster runs, repeated single notes, and figures mixed in. Gifticus has a lot of creative lines on bass underneath the piano again, and then he gets his own solo. He uses a lot of space here, and the drums drop out for a bit to let him float freely. He builds it into a long, intense exposition of a solo. Speaking of drums, Gounaris is a very delicate and nuanced drummer all through this recording, but he's more of a texture creator, especially on cymbals. He never overplays. I really enjoyed just the little kind of scratches and kind of paper sketches almost he makes behind everything. Gifticus ties the bass solo back into the original melody riff. They go around again, a few final bass flourishes and harmonics at the end. Track 3 is the title track, Broken Blue, another Menios original. Their description, a fragmentary, extreme angular, dense, and adventurous blues composition with intense interaction between the members of the trio. That's true. Yes, it's angular, it's choppy, but it's also boppy. And that melody here comes out in the piano on the tune. Gifticus changes the rhythmic feel as they go along, keeping it unpredictable. Menios gets some more adventurous harmonic ideas in his solo, and it really gets moving in some places with driving cymbals and walking bass. He turns more bluesy midway through, And the trio is really burning right through this. The movement is great. Tzifakis has a more abstract bass solo here. It takes him a while to actually chill out from the crazy kind of chugging lines he's been doing behind the piano. And weird, these intense intervals too. Once he gets down, he becomes more creative. Sliding phrases, rhythmic figures. There's a lot of fun with fast finger work here. And you get some answers from the piano to what he's doing. The interplay is good in the trio here before he gets way out there with some intervals and a final glist note. This is a pretty out there bass solo. It was very cool. They bring it back to the melody, trading off for Gounaris to get some drum soloing between Menios' blazing runs. It's a lot of fun, and this tune really shows off the interplay between the members, as they mentioned in their description. Track 4, we're going to get the only sort of more standard piece on here. But it's a nice contrast, and they do a really good sort of interpretive performance of it. Once Upon a Summertime, Michel Legrand's piece. As they mentioned, it's the quietest moment for the trio on this album and is pervaded by lyricism, introspection, and a tinge of nostalgia. Well, it's a pretty and forlorn, slow piano kind of opening, beautifully restrained playing. The bass and drums don't join in until exactly 2 minutes of the piano. Tzifakis adds a bit of push and a little more counterline in his bass work to the piano ideas. Gounaris with, I said, paper-thin brush textures behind. They're like crisp little see-through, like wafer kind of rolled out things. It sounds really nice. It has a sense of open space.
Sensitive recording.
Yeah. Not concerned with the meter. You sort of, like we said, what was that recording that we talked about time almost stopping in earlier this year?
It was a classical one, right?
No. It was another jazz recording we're talking about. It'll come to me in a moment.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's sort of the time as the movement of time kind of drops out, and then it allows Menios to do some really lovely melodic playing. So you lose sense of that meter, and you're in this sort of free space. Tzifakis has a lovely melodic bass solo as well here. They go around the melody once more, and Menios adds a little more rhythmic playfulness with extra notes and a pretty final ending. Bill Charlap's recording.
God. Yeah, that was last year.
Yeah, that we talked about that.
Yeah, that's right. We did say that.
It just, the tempos on that album that we're taking sort of lets things just open up, and the players sort of see into the time rather than the time sort of dictating what they're doing. I got that feeling on this piece. It's just so relaxed and open to kind of freedom of movement outside of that time constraint. I really enjoyed it. And track 5.
This next track, and then this next track, too.
Yeah.
And dispelled that completely.
Yeah. Change of pace here for Bipolar.
All you need is the title to know what's going to happen.
This is composition. It says, based on the harmony of the jazz standard Solar, you probably know this one if you're a jazz fan, it's a quirky musical metaphor for an anthropological type, the old New York hipster of the 1940s, who has been historically and culturally
that anthropological type.
associated with the emergence of bebop. Characteristics of this type that we have tried to convey in a musical way are a twist, a looseness, a peculiar, incomprehensible way of speaking, and perhaps a tone of irony and sarcasm. Well, that'd be New York.
And a heroin addiction.
It could be. It's a fun, boppy number, with the bass and piano working on a syncopated strain of the melody that alternates with a more swinging walking bass section. Menios gets an interesting start to his solo, picking out a lot of scattered notes before harmonizing and getting more of a rhythmic push. The bass and drums have left him alone to do his thing for a while. He gets a few harmonic surprises along the way. Bass and drums join back in as he continues along backed by their swinging groove. He has some really speedy runs and punctuated rhythmic figures, really digging in with left-hand accents. Giftikis is next with a solo starting out, leaving lots of space between his figures, adding some cool double-stop notes and slides. He gets into a real rhythmic groove, swinging hard, melodic ideas way up in the high register. They come back to the melody, trading off 12-bar phrases with Gounaris for some drum soloing before they go around once more to finish out the tune. More time-constrained but fun and boppy influence here. Track 6, Ding Dong. This is Giftikis' composition. It says, it explores the soloistic possibilities of double bass and piano in a condition of open form and harmony, serving an angular, energetic, and expressionistic, bordering on screaming at times, aesthetic approach. Well, I don't know about that. I'll tell you, I thought about this as a sandwich. If we're going to talk about New York, yeah, this is a sandwich, and I'm going to tell you why. Kind of a drum intro.
Tell us, Russ.
It's a drum intro, but the main kind of the bread, which I said is pumpernickel here. It's it's got this bass and left-hand piano line. It forms a basic kind of melodic idea, what there is of a melody there. Then Gounaris keeps a beat percolating on the snare. Giftikis gets some free-form soloing on the bass, and then he's got a lot to explore. Eventually, the drums just drop out and let him fly free. There's too much going on here because this is really, a freestyle kind of improvisation. To describe all of it, you just have to listen to it and hear all the interesting ideas he comes up with. That switches over piano. Menios is up next for his own thing. He keeps kind of a rolling, ominous bass idea going for a while he works these kind of angsty and angular piano lines in the right hand. It ends up with some more punctuated high chords. Then the drums return. They return to that kind of original bass and piano line. So it's kind of like a free-form sandwich with like a lot of gooey, amorphous ideas that are very cool, but it's between like this stiff pumpernickel bread that's that bass and piano line, that keeps it together, So I don't know, like extremely raw roast beef with Russian dressing between a little bit, maybe 2-day-old pumpernickel that's kind of stiff with that bass line. That's what you got. And it's kind of neat. Okay. What I like is their music gets out there and explores things, but it's always got a solid structure, and you can see where they're coming from. There's no just mindless doodling here. Everything is planned out, and when they do get into sort of more free-form areas, their interplay and communication is so strong that you never feel like things have, the dog's not off the leash anywhere. It always sticks together. I really like that about it. A couple more cool tunes here. Track 7, Blue Flower. This is Giftikis' composition. Their description, it's the application of an abstract, expressionistic, fractured playing style in a tropical, in parentheses, modal environment. So modal and tropical become one idea here. But this is... Again, I said I used the sandwich. I'm getting hungry here. Maybe, I don't know. The melody is made up of some repeated modally piano figures that sandwich a more swinging series of figures. This is in the sort of head composition. The rhythm breaks up for some bass and piano interplay as they have exchanges. The drums coming back in intermittently when Giftikis gets a groove growing in the bass. He gets some really rhythmic patterns on the bass here. Menios is soloing out in modal land here, peppering in strongly accented chords, building some dissonant tension. The groove evaporates completely for the start of Giftikis' bass solo. He explores lots of modal ideas, gets a tight rhythmic groove going again for Gounaris to bring the drums back in for. His vocalizations with the modal melodic ideas in his solo are pretty cool too. Here humming and singing along a bit in the background. Menios chimes through the modal chords for Gounaris to do some intense drumming behind, and they close it out with a final run through the melody. It's a very long exploration of all of this. I've just made it sound concise, but it clocks in at a little over 11 minutes. But yeah, very cool. A little bit abstract, but it all holds together and gets some nice modal kind of ideas coming out here. And we're going to finish up the recording with Portrait in Yellow. This is a Gounaris composition. They describe it as a purely impressionistic composition with timbral harmony and a performative approach characterized by introspection, an implicit inner pulse, and a mood of melancholy and reminiscence. Yeah.
Did they write these, or
I don't
did
know.
somebody else
It's on their homepage.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty flowery language.
Should have you write it. Oh, this is like a sandwich.
Yeah, it's a pumpernickel sandwich of a tune.
It's got pastrami. It's got mustard. It
reminds me of this deli I used to get these sandwiches, Durlacker's Deli, and they had these nice pumpernickel roast beef with coleslaw in there with horseradish on it. Ooh. Yeah.
Right. I lived in Brooklyn when I grew up. Those Brooklyn I don't know what they're like now, but they used to give you sandwiches that had the entire side of the pig in them. It was really unbelievable. They were just huge. It was a workout for your jaw. You know, you kind of felt like you were at the gym while you're eating it.
That's
you're
what I need right
losing
now.
all those calories chewing it while you're gaining them by eating it.
Work those jaw muscles.
Yeah.
Anyway, this one, Portrait in Yellow. I'm going to finish up here. Whatever all those descriptions were, this is my listening note. It starts out with a faint cymbal work there. A sparse melody of offset bass and piano notes becomes more lush with rolling piano chords that flow freely in their own time. Nice kind of feel here. Piano and bass then have floating dialogue in free tempo. Some really beautiful melodic ideas emerge from this. I was kind of really drawn into that. The cymbals provide background textures when the phrases swell up. Then the bass and piano finish their conversation. Gounaris has some time for a brushwork solo around the drums. It becomes almost silent. Then the piano and drums return with this really offset melody. The way the notes come out in the bass and the piano, it's almost echoish. From that mirrors the beginning, and it rolls into a little more intensity before it ends quietly. So I really enjoyed this recording. It's very interesting, very modern and forward thinking, but accessible at the same time, because I found it really easy to, despite these descriptions, I found it easy to listen and understand what they were aiming for, and the sort of leaps they take musically, but also the trust that they have with each other. You can really sense that interplay that's going on in the connection between them. So that interplay is great, especially considering these adventurous approaches they take to the compositions, and then the free open arrangements. Really fine piano playing, but what makes this recording interesting is that Tzifakis' outstanding bass work has an equal role in all of the melodies and in the solo time. So, normally you listen to a piano trio, depending on the sort of dynamics of, the group, the bass will get some solos. But here, bass and piano, these guys are sharing equally, not only in the solo time, but, even in the melodies of the tunes, the bass is giving these counter lines that are just as important as what the piano is doing. And that makes their approach kind of unique. It's fresh sounding, and I think you got to listen to this repeatedly to pull out everything that's happening. I think this is a fabulous trio. I really found their music engaging with so much happening and doing all different kinds of approaches with melodic, harmonic exploration, working with rhythm, and then, taking rhythm kind of out of the equation as much as possible, working through these tunes. Really nice. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, I was kind of sitting on the fence saying, I wonder if I want this or not, because it's the kind of album that I would buy just because I know it's going to get better with each. It's going to reveal more with each listening. It's not. I would encourage listeners, if you listen to this, give it more than one listen, because it really is. It's got a lot in it, and I think there's going to be a lot more. So yeah, now you've sold me on it. I guess I'm going to have to get this one now too.
I think I listened to this about 2 or 3 times non-analytically. I just put it on to see if it was going to draw me in, and it did. And then I had to listen to it again to sort of think about what I was listening to, and I was familiar with where each piece was going to go then. And then when I actually started to think about what they were doing and their approach, I was all that more intrigued. By that time I had heard it 3 or 4 times. So, wow. Yeah, I really think this is a good one.
Yeah, it's got 8 tracks on it. It's a fairly long album, though, despite
it's an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah, it is a long recording.
Right, and it gets more abstract as it goes too, but that's not a bad thing. It I feel like it hits its perfect balance, like at about tracks 5, 6, and 7. And for me, Bipolar stood out as a composition, although I liked it all. So the quieter tracks were really chilled out. It was really pretty. Yeah. So this is something. Yeah, this is going to be one I'll probably have on time to time over the summer. Sounds good.
Yeah, Spiral Trio. Good work. I might hit them up. I'll let them know we talked about their album, see what they say. Cause,
a bit of a surprise that was good.
I'd like to hear, I'd like to have more people listen to this, because I think it's a really fresh and adventurous approach to this. All right, we've got one more, and another Greek piano trio. My list is so big I could come up with, piano trios from anywhere. And here's a label I haven't heard before either. Irida. Menios Gounaris Trio. It's called Set in Motion. So we've got Menios Gounaris on piano, Grigoris Theodoridis on bass, and, as I said, going back to our first recording, the young Jason Waster, who seems to be much in demand, on drums on this one too. So he's our common thread here. Gounaris was born in Agrinio in 1983. He's not that old yet. He studied classical piano at Agrinio Conservatory, music theory as well, and then went on to study jazz piano as well. And he's got this trio here that has been performing around Greece. However, in 2011, he moved to Holland to study at Utrecht Conservatory for a while. And if you look at the album here, you see he's got a nice female figure form to catch the eye on this album here. His first album as a leader with his group Flood, that was called First Dropped, was released in 2020. But on this release, we've got Set in Motion with this piano trio. It starts out with a tune called Big Drop, and this begins with a repeated syncopated 3-chord piano and bass figure. That chord riff continues into the melody section with a little swinging melodic and bluesy right-hand piano lines that fill in the gaps. The next section has more punctuated piano chords of modal harmony over walking bass with a heavier swing feel. But Waster mixes up the beat inside of that swing, has some tight fills as they go through the whole pattern again. It breaks into a piano solo for Gounaris, and he starts swinging hard over the walking bass. He gets some bluesy ideas in his phrases and focuses on cleanly articulated notes and driving left-hand chords, especially when it goes through the modal harmony section. He gets some rolling figures, building it up to a repeat of the tension, that tension-building chord figure from the beginning, and finishes it up with a descending fall of a run. That brings Theodoridis up for a bass solo. He keeps a bouncy feel that's tight with clear attacks through his ideas. They head back to the melody section of trickling right-hand lines, and when they get back to the repeating chord figures, bass and piano come down in volume to vamp out for a while and give Waster some drum soloing time, slowing up on the last one and there's some ascending piano notes to finish it off. Track 2 is called Learn to Remember. A drum tom roll starts into a more extended drum solo that also features a lot of toms. At about a minute and 15 seconds, Waster gets a new soft groove going, and then Gounaris enters with the kind of start and stop melody, working in step with the bass on figures. The melody gains momentum as it goes working up to a rhythmic kind of Vince Guaraldi type of feel. And Waster builds the beat from lighter cymbals to an actual kind of backbeat hit on the snare. It really progresses in its rhythmic feel through the phrases. They go around the melody again. Then Theodoros is up first for a bass solo. It's rhythmic throughout, and he gets some nice melodic ideas toward the end as he hands it off to Gounaris to solo. He starts it out on the piano simply, building it up to more rhythmic and bluesy ideas as he goes along in the same way as the melody develops. So, this melody starts simple, and by the end of the phrase, it's much more rhythmic and active. His lines have a really nice rhythmic swing to them, but I also like how he often uses fewer notes with clear articulation. They go around the melody again, and this time Gounaris keeps up with improvisations using those clear, simple, and repeated notes with rhythmic intensity. He works it up into a rising rolling chord idea kind of thing in the right hand over the driving groove Waster has worked up before the final chord section and a little slowdown to the end. Yeah, nice kind of rhythmic feel progression with the melodic development in this tune. Track 3, Fleury's Blues. This is a fun swinging 12-bar blues with some monkish type lines and tight syncopated movement between the trio. The bass goes out walking for Gounaris to start his piano solo. He's going to take his time on this one to build it up slowly, starting with one-handed phrases in the middle register that leave a lot of space. Waster has some nice surprise hits and fills as he brings in the left hand of the piano for some extra support on these solo lines and more bluesy ideas that still leave big gaps of anticipation. Then he gets some nice two-handed rhythmic figures on the piano going, and that gets more adventurous with the harmonies, finishing off with some cool descending two-handed kind of cross-rhythmic figures to what the bass and drums are doing. Theodoros gets a bass solo next, getting high and bluesy, and then Gounaris takes another 12-bar solo chorus on piano, then giving it over to Waster for 2 choruses himself, mixing things up nicely before they come back for another couple runs through the melody. So cool little blues piece here. Track 4 is Set in Motion, a pretty piano melody, sounding kind of modally with nice rhythms, rhythmic bass lines below. It does get a nice sense of motion, but it takes a pause on a kind of an unexpected low note that kind of stops things, but then it picks up again. Very pretty harmonies here that show a nice touch and phrasing sense by Gounaris. He solos getting into some extended runs of intense rhythmic figure phrases into chiming chords. Waster helps build it up with a pressurized drum fill ideas and clicks behind. Comes down softly for a bass solo that has a yearning quality, and it gets like these high-reaching phrases that seems like they reach the absolute upper limit of what the bass is possible to express. It's like way up is going to become a cello or a viola very soon. They go around the melody again, Waster getting some nice hi-hat textures and then a very soft ending. Track 5, Siren. Hard boppy, intense, modally chord intro to this 6/8 feel minor melody. Gounaris keeps that syncopated chord energy going in his left hand. The final section of the melody has some cool syncopated, ominous chromatic chord movement to it. It really makes you think something bad is going to happen. They go around again with some rolling embellishments from Gounaris. He solos first, again using lots of clearly articulated notes, first getting more rhythmic as he goes along. The left hand is always driving. He works into some tricky rhythmic figures and some high rolling and chiming chords. Then it comes down for a bass solo from Fidetzis. He has a lot of bluesy rhythmic ideas in this one. They go around the melody once more, repeating that ominous chromatic section and finishing with a high flourish from Gounaris on piano. And we end up with track 6, The Boss. This one is a sexy little stroll with a pulsing bass rhythm and a minor bluesy piano melody. It has a contrasting section that's really intriguing with these uplifting kind of chord progressions. The mood changes completely. Really nice composition. Gounaris is very fleet and rhythmic in his solo here. The bass is digging in underneath. Waster kicks up the beat with interesting subdivisions on the cymbals. Fidetzis gets a melodic bass solo that gets pretty interesting over the contrasting section of those chords. I feel like he was not sure like what direction he was going to go with those cool harmonies there, but it all works out, and they take it through the melody once more. Waster kicks it up on the contrasting section of that progression, and then take it out gently with that sexy little opening riff that's minimalized and just comes down. It's a really cool, intriguing tune. Wow, this album... great playing all the way around. Fabulous piano. Some nice bass work. Really fun original compositions. There's one thing wrong with this whole recording, though. It's too short.
What might that be?
It's only 39 minutes. Yeah, so it needs 2 more tunes.
Still, 39 minutes. Yeah, it would be nicer if it was longer, but 39 minutes is an acceptable length, though, for an album. Yeah. So, yeah.
But I was intrigued enough that I wanted to hear more. So, Yeah,
I liked it too. I also kind of looked for this on CD, and it's not available, probably because it's on such a small label.
Right.
They probably don't have. But I would like to see this on CD one day. I would get it. So if anybody's out there is listening, wants to pass the word on.
Yeah. So
that would be great.
Menios Gounaris, very intriguing pianist, nice solos, exciting. The interplay here is good, but the compositions are really intriguing too. I found them to be, satisfying, almost with like they have some kind of, hooky elements, almost like a pop song will hook you in, waiting for certain things to appear again. And I really liked that element to it. And that just happens to round out this nice collection of Greek piano trio jazz. Yeah. Really exciting.
Yeah, all in all, for me, I said this album crafted to raise the spirits. It's upbeat, cheerful, sunny, and I especially like The Boss a lot at the last track.
Yeah.
This is an album I would like to have, actually. I kind of hope they'll get it on CD one day.
Yeah.
All in all, though, this has been quite a week of discovery. Not just that there's really good Greek jazz, but it's stuff that I really would like to have in my collection. It's really interesting, and the classical as well. I was really intrigued to hear all of that. It was
everything was really good. That was nice to hear that. A new Greek composer would have never heard of otherwise. Probably ever experienced that music, and if I had just picked 3 piano trio releases. I mean, the piano trio list I have is huge. I'll never even get through a third of all of the things that come out. But if I had tried to pick 3 really good recordings, not confined to one, country or any other criteria, I don't think I could have been more pleased than I was with these 3, all from Greece. They're all top notch, and I enjoyed all of them. These are going to go on my continuing to listen to kind of playlists. So can't beat it.
All right. So you've got some discoveries waiting for you, listener. Please enjoy.
Check it all out. Yeah. So this is Greek Week.
Pour yourself a nice ouzo for these.
Oh, yeah. That's what I need is a little vial of ouzo.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Until we go back to Greece.
Oh, well.
It's been all Greek to us this week, and for you listeners, remember, Greek Week continues with our interview number 4 that'll come out on Thursday. You can hear the interview, find out the genesis of all those great tunes on the Yucca Organ Trio recording. So check that out. Wednesday night in America, Thursday morning in Japan and somewhere in between in Europe and other parts of the world.
Yeah, basically in Europe, you'll wake up and it'll be on your podcast site and just be ready for your morning coffee.
And I think we've already got something lined up for next week's episode too. We're going to have some good vibrations. I don't think we have much of.
Yeah, we're going to have some. Well, in my case, I'll have a marimba recording. That's going to be my contribution. Otherwise, I've got two other things that I really aren't going to mix in with that, but I just want to get them up there. So
All right.
But we'll launch into the vibes thing with a marimba recording that I found in classical music. Pretty one of a kind, anyway.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
We'll see.
And I just happen to have a bunch of jazz recordings. Well, one of them is vibraphone. The other two feature vibraphone in the instrumentation, but they were both on my list, so it'll be a good chance to group by that theme for some summer vibes. To get that out.
Yeah, we're going to have some more nationalities coming back soon, but I feel like we got to get away from it for a week or two. Otherwise, it'll just never stop. We'll typecast ourselves,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We can forget about the borders and nationalities for a while and focus on some other themes there. Anyway, a lot to look forward to. Check out the interview coming out this Thursday. We think you'll enjoy that too. And next week for some summer vibes. That'll be episode 70 next week. Wow, getting up there. And I think we'll have over 10,000 downloads by sometime in July too. So looking forward to that.
And I'm looking at the weather here in where we are in Japan, and it will be summery weather. Yeah. But when we're doing the podcast next week,
it's going to be hot. Going to be hot.
I will be bathed in sweat as we speak next week.
Yeah. Well, all the good.
Wrap a towel around my headphones.
Good weather for listening to Music Inside with the AC on. So look forward to that. Anyway, this has been episode 69 of Adult Music, your podcast with music for the mature mind. Greek Week this week. Remember, check out the playlist on Deezer. Look on Podbean, our host site, if you can't see all the links for everything else on Apple Music and Spotify. And remember, tomorrow, after this episode is released, we record Sunday night, release Monday. I get the playlist for the upcoming week out the same day. So if you want to check it out early, you can find that exclusively on Deezer, but I also put the link for it on our Facebook page, so come check us out there. Thanks again for our wonderful logo in neon, that sort of glow that draws you into the Adult Music podcast logo to Fast Signs of Staten Island, and we appreciate that.
Right.
And we'll be back again next week with episode 70 and some summer vibes. So until then, enjoy Greek Week, and we'll see you again next week for a new episode.